everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about why thrifting might actually be bad for the planet. Before we jump in, if you would rather read along or you're hard of hearing, you can access the script in the description down below. Before anyone clicks away, I just want to say thrift shopping actually is a great thing to do for the planet, but the way that we go about it is actually kind of wasteful. What I mean is that thrift shopping and donating is a great way to keep stuff out of the landfill, keep stuff in circulation, and support a circular economy. And honestly, it's cheaper as well. I think thrifting is a great eco-activity to participate in and normalize. But we really need to be careful about where we're donating our items. Not necessarily buying, but more focused on the donation part. Currently, Americans recycle or donate only 15% of their unwanted clothing, yet thrift stores still can't keep up. Imagine if we were to donate 100% of our used clothing. And obviously it would be great to keep 100% of our used clothing out of the landfill, but that's not possible with our current state of consumption. This means that 10.5 million tons of clothing gets thrown away every single year in the US alone. And we will talk more about overconsumption later and why ultimately this is the root of the problem. It's also important to note that everything that is donated is not resold for a number of reasons. Of that 15% of items donated, only around 20% of that will make it to the shelves of a thrift store. First, that's because we're donating incorrectly. And by incorrectly, I mean we're donating broken things, we're donating ripped and stained clothing. Other things that simply can't be sold because the thrift stores don't allow it to be sold. So if you see something that you think, I would not buy this in a thrift store, even if it was like my style or whatever, don't donate it. If it's not in good condition, don't donate it. Find a way to upcycle it instead, recycle it. Ultimately, try your best to keep it out of the landfill, but don't put it on someone else's shoulders to deal with. Just like with recycling, when you ask your local recycling facilities what they will and will not take, ask your thrift stores too what they will and will not take. Some won't take mattresses, some won't take large appliances like washing machines and other miscellaneous things, so just call and ask before you take your next donation over. But even if every single person who is dropping off donations took the care and time to donate things correctly, but the thrift stores still only have so much room that they have on the floor to sell, and also they only have so much room for storage too. This is especially the case with bigger chains like Goodwill and Salvation Army, which are some of the largest thrift chains in the United States where most Americans probably take their donatable goods to. So where do our unsold items end up? We're going to be focusing specifically on Goodwill because that's where I found most of the information, so let's talk about Goodwill outlets. In the case of Goodwill, our items usually make a pit stop at Goodwill outlets. Most major cities have one, and this is a place where customers can go and buy items by the pound. Items that are then not sold at the Goodwill outlets are probably destined for the landfill. But that is a hefty trash bill for Goodwill to take care of with no return on their investment, so they've kind of turned to a few other things as well. Sometimes Goodwill will send clothing to be recycled. Now, it's not typically recycled like into a new shirt or into a new pair of pants because clothing recycling is really complicated, and if you would like me to dive further into clothing recycling, let me know. I would love to talk about it and do the research for myself. But ultimately, it's like with regular recycling. Plastic can't be recycled with metal, just like with clothing. Cotton can't be recycled with polyester, can't be recycled with nylon. You have to recycle like materials. And most clothing these days are already made of mixed materials. Like this shirt is probably like a polyester blend with something else. So it makes it really hard to recycle clothing into new clothing. But I'd say this recycling thing that Goodwill has going on is still a better step than the landfill, and here's what they do. They usually give to an organization called SMART, Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles. They reported that about 30% of the clothing that they receive is turned into industrial rags, 20% is shredded into filling for furniture and insulation, and 5% is sent to the landfill. That's not a bad number sent to the landfill at the end of the day. But what about the rest of the 45% of clothing that they receive? The clothing that SMART receives is still stuff that probably has rips, tears, or otherwise won't be sold, and that's the stuff that they try to recycle. The clothing that remains wearable, like if I donated this shirt and it didn't sell at Goodwill, it didn't sell at their outlet, and SMART received it, and they're like, wow, this is still a nice t-shirt, they would instead try to resell it in the US once again. But ultimately, they're probably going to ship it overseas to another country to deal with. Now, this may sound better than the landfill, and I thought so at first too, but there are a lot of implications with shipping our unwanted goods to another country to deal with. It's estimated that 700,000 tons of used clothing gets exported every year. It has pros and cons, but some big cons are clearly emissions, sending that clothing thousands of miles, and this also impacts the local economies as well. This puts a huge burden on the local people to sort and then attempt to resell our unwanted items. Not to mention, local textile artists in the region now have to compete with cheaper prices. In Kenya, for example, a few decades ago, their garment industry was flourishing with around 500,000 garment workers. But now there are only tens of thousands. Some people might be able to make a job out of sorting our trash and reselling it, sure, but not everyone. A lot of people will be out of jobs because of this. And it may also be a cultural loss. A lot of these local textile artists are making clothes that are culturally important, part of their heritage. And now everyone wants to wear our cheap fast fashion brands that we're sending them instead of their cultural goods. As well as their traditional ways of making clothing could be lost, and maybe not now, but in a few decades perhaps. Now many people think this is a charitable thing to do, to give clothing to those in need, but they don't need our trash. They don't need our unwanted items. Especially like we just continue to ship and ship and ship them stuff. We've already shipped them thousands of tons. I think they have enough clothing to go around. Say they get a clothing shipment this year, they already have plenty of clothing to wear. What happens to it? Many of the things that we have donated to these countries still can't be resold. They are then responsible for dealing with the ultimate destruction and disposal of this product because they are now at the bottom of this fashion waste supply chain. They have no choice but to send it to the landfill or even burn it. And if you know anything about burning of plastics and plastic-based products, it can be pretty toxic to inhale. It is estimated that in Ghana alone, around 110,000 pounds of clothing becomes trash every day. It may even end up polluting the ocean and other waterways in the region. This is mostly fast fashion made from plastic that will never fully break down anyway, and it can also be toxic when it does break down. Now, like I said, the root of the problem actually is overconsumption. It's not us donating, it's not thrift stores entirely. They probably could be doing a better job, but ultimately it's overconsumption. The more that we buy, the more that we have to throw away or donate. Americans currently buy 5 times more clothing than we did in the 1980s, just 40 years ago. Now, just because thrift stores exist and it's an option to give your clothes new life does not give you an excuse to keep buying and buying and buying. Especially if you're continuing to buy brand new, the cycle will never end. Now, if we all quit buying brand new and kept overconsuming used clothing, donated goods, that's not that bad. It's still an issue, I mean, at the root, but the issue is we're still living in this linear economy. We're still consuming something brand new, giving it to a thrift store, and they're ultimately going to throw it away, stuff that can't be resold, and it keeps going. Now, if we keep buying from thrift stores, wearing it, and donating to the thrift stores, it keeps going around and around. Of course, until the garment is completely worn out, in which we should upcycle it instead of throw it away and give it to other countries. But I hope that you can see the point that, yes, if you buy something brand new, you can donate it at the end of its life, the end of you wanting that item, but the cycle is never going to end if we continue to buy brand new stuff. This is especially the case with fast fashion, and you can learn more about fast fashion in this video up here and why it is so detrimental to the planet on its own without even considering the donation effects of those products. Ultimately, thrift stores receive so much because we buy so much. So think through your next purchase before buying it, and think about what you're going to do with that product and if you're actually going to use it. Here are a few questions you can ask yourselves. Do I really need this item? What will I wear it with? Where will I store it? How will I take care of it? Can I reuse or recycle it at the end of its life? If it's not clothing, where will it go in my house? How often will I use this item? Can I borrow or rent something instead, like a book, a suit, a power tool, and so forth? And next time you're thinking about buying something that is probably an impulse, think your purchase through. What I like to do personally is I have like a little notes section in my phone when I think of like, I really want ice skates. I'll write it on the list. If I never think about it again, I probably didn't actually need or want it. It was just an impulse. But if I think about it again, a couple times a week, every day, it's probably something I'm going to use and get a lot of use out of. But what can we do to fix this donation issue? Of course, you can think before you buy in the first place, like we already talked about. Still donate. Donating is still so important to keep this circular economy and show these businesses that we want to see thrift stores. But donate in a better way. I really encourage you stop donating from Goodwill and other chain thrift stores because they cannot handle the amount of donations that they receive already. So donate to smaller thrift stores. You can donate to homeless shelters or women's shelters. Please don't donate literal trash. You could also resell your items on Facebook Marketplace, on OfferUp, ThreadUp, eBay. You could have a clothing swap with your friends. You could save your items and give them as a hand-me-down to a sibling, a cousin, a friend, and so forth. Learn to repair your items instead of throwing them away. If you have a missing button or a small hole, it doesn't take that much effort or equipment to learn how to fix those things yourselves. But also, if you don't want to learn, you don't have the space, the equipment, the time, you can ask a friend who does know how to do this stuff to help you out. Most clothing we donate ends up being recycled anyway if it's not sold, so try to think about recycling your fabric in the first place. You could turn old t-shirts into rags, makeup remover pads, hankies, napkins, dog toys, cat toys, rugs, grocery bags, and so much more. Like we already talked about too, check to see what your thrift stores will and will not take so that you're not donating stuff that they're instantly gonna throw in the trash. And they are not a trash service, so please don't give them your trash. Let your garbage men take care of that instead of Goodwill. Also, give your items a nice clean, make sure they work before donating them. If you have something that's dusty, wipe the dust off. If you have an electronic, plug it in real quick, make sure that it works, because the stuff that looks the nicest, that actually works, obviously it's going to be sold. Also, don't donate anything with broken or missing parts. If you're donating breakable items, package them carefully so that they don't break in transit. And shop secondhand. But why would this help? Why would this help the problem? Especially after I just told you not to overconsume. Right, don't overconsume. I mean, it's still possible to overconsume on secondhand goods, but if you need something, look secondhand first. I talk more about this in my What's in My Eco Home Las Vegas edition, I'll leave it linked above, about how I got everything for my new home secondhand on many different sources, at Goodwill, on OfferUp, on Facebook Marketplace. It just takes a little browsing, especially with online thrifting these days. It's so easy to find the exact item that you're looking for. Obviously, if it's something time sensitive, like you really, really need, I don't know, a new phone or something, you gotta do what you gotta do. But if you have the time to spare to look secondhand, I really encourage you to look secondhand. But at the end of the day, even if you're buying things that you just want, they're not needs, secondhand is still great because it's supporting this circular economy, and ultimately, the more goods that Goodwill sells, the more that they can put on their shelves. I hope that you learned something valuable from this video. If I missed anything, definitely leave them down below. If you have any questions or any other videos, ideas that you would like to see based on this topic, let me know. I hope this encouraged you to think before you donate next time. Thrifting is obviously great. Creating and supporting a circular economy is one of the best things we can do for the planet, but even then, it still has some implications like we learned. If you think anyone would find value in this video, don't forget to share it with them as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you support this message, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe. I talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste and practical ways to be an activist. If you would like more of my thrifting, decluttering, donating videos, I will leave the entire playlist linked above, as well as the individual videos linked in the description so you can keep watching. But yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, especially if you made it all the way to the end. And if you would like to support me in another way, I do have a Patreon. It's always in the description of the videos. Thank you so much to my current patrons. Your support means a lot to me. And as always, remember that your small actions have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. I think thrifting is a great The stores still only have so much room to put stuff out on the selling. This is mostly fast fashion. If we all quit buying brand new and kept overconsuming, you could save your items and give them to a I don't know. I probably, if I was, forget that. So